We all know how change feels. It could be like when you change jobs, leaving something behind you are used to for something new. It's exciting, but there's a pain in your stomach because you're leaving the familiar behind and into the unknown. In other cases, you could consider moving to another city. You miss the roads you knew like the back of your hand, the neighbors who'd just wave without having to say anything. It's exciting and it's new. That feeling that you're walking on not quite smooth ground you're not sure you can stand on. Real transformation starts there. The thing is, though, most of us are scared of discomfort. We build our entire lives around avoiding it. Part of the reason we keep chasing after routines, relationships, and goals we don't really feel excited about is that they make us feel safe. It's like the old, worn-out pair of shoes you keep, refusing to throw out even though you know they're not in the best posture for you. Imagine you're at a party. You strike up a conversation with someone, only to catch yourself halfway through and you realize you're trying too hard to be liked. You're joking, nodding too enthusiastically, trying to impress. But why? That's because some deep down there is hidden, nagging fear that if you are not accepted by some, you are not enough. Suddenly, you realize that it isn't just about small talk. It's about protecting yourself from the pain of rejection. For our entire lives, we spend wearing armor, making little defenses against the things that make us feel vulnerable. For you, maybe it's always be the funny one, always be the one to distract from the deeper water. Or you're the achiever, the one who works a little harder, gets to the top a bit faster. Because you came to realize some time ago that your worth is measured by how many accomplishments you tick off. We get into avoiding so much that we have completely forgotten we are doing it. Think for a second about social media. People are presenting to you their curated lives, carefully filtered photos, carefully thought out captions. Behind each post, there's a subtle but powerful drive. It's a need to be seen a certain way and control the narrative of how others perceive us. But what about when they don't like, comment, approve? That little sting, it's not disappointment. It's the wound to our core, the wound we always ran from. The same with the smaller pains of everyday life. For example, you're running late to an important meeting and spill coffee on your shirt. At that moment, everything in the world seems to be against you, and slowly, the frustration is warming at the shortest of your gut. You'll switch off and realize that this isn't even a frustration with the coffee or the time, but that these layers of expectation you've heaped upon yourself, assumptions that everything must be perfect. You can't afford to mess up. When you dig deeper, you realize that underneath it all is the same fear of not being good enough, of not having control, whether mental or physical. The problem is, life is messy, unpredictable, and full of surprises. Alternatively, we can either wake up every time a bump or turn occurs, or consent that discomfort is part of the package. And when we do, something incredible happens. We stop letting pain define us. We don't escape suffering. We take it on to experience the highs and the lows of life. Who would you be if you weren't afraid of pain? Would you chase a dream job, knowing that you may fail? Would you put yourself out there with someone, even when you knew they may reject you? Would you care less what others think and care more about what matters to you? If you stop running away from pain, you begin to live authentically. Isn't that what we all want? Imagine if you've tried not to have a tough conversation with a friend or partner. There was a burgeoning inside you of something to say, something to hurt or disappoint or frustrate. Yet, you bit your tongue. Silence was your choice. It was your way of avoiding the conversation, hoping that way things would stay smooth. The silence wasn't a way to escape the pain, literally. It was simply prolonging the pain. It wasn't until that person crossed your sight, the small pang of discomfort would rise, and then it would get a little worse each time. Suppose you sit down with that friend or partner, focusing on your heart that's getting tenser, body experiencing fear of conflict, and finally, you speak your truth. It might have been hard to have that conversation. There might have been tears, maybe anger, awkward pauses. The air would have cleared. You took a moment to deal with the discomfort directly, rather than treating the unspoken words like an infection that is allowed to fester. This is the paradox. There is only one way to really eliminate pain, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, is to experience it and move through it. How do you feel when you are uncomfortable? Maybe it was when you had to stand up and speak in front of a crowd, or when you had to talk to someone you do not like. Think about it. Those were probably moments when everything in you was screaming at you to run, to back off into silence to avoid that pain. Discomfort is the edge of your comfort zone. It's the place to choose to step out of what you know and into what you have never tried before. It's all signals: fear, discomfort, uncertainty. You're coming up to a boundary, the call to push past. All too often, a part of life is trying to control the uncontrollable. We plan our future and attempt to give it all shape with a finite complexity. We talk ourselves into believing that if we just do it right, if we follow the plan, then everything will work out. Life doesn't work that way. Life is messy. It's like grabbing a handful of water and trying to hang on to it. It's inevitable. It doesn't matter how hard you try. As you try to control it, the harder you try, the more you miss out on life itself, the flow. Suppose a bird tries to build its nest on a windy day. The wind blows the twig away every time it places it. The bird would get frustrated and give up and decide the wind was against it. Or it could vanish into the chaos and instead choose to work with the wind, find a way to build its nest. Life is like that wind, blowing and constantly shifting. You can either stay stuck in your comfort zone and continue to fight it, or you can learn to embrace how it's unpredictable and flow with it, trusting that, even in the unknown, there is beauty and growth to be found. To go beyond means facing that uncertainty. Put simply, it's saying that you can believe that life is okay, even if it doesn't fit into your model. In actual fact, it's when life breaks your model that the most profound internal changes take place. Imagine a moment in which everything didn't fall into place. Perhaps you lost a job, a relationship broke up, or a dream died. Probably, in the moment, it seemed to you like the world was falling in around you. If you take a look back, however, you might notice that those were the exact moments that drove you past your limits, encouraged you to replace yourself with something better, to become more than you had been before. Imagine you being a kid learning to ride a bicycle for the first time. When you start to make a mistake, they help keep you stable, make you feel safe. But rolling on those extra wheels always keeps your fear of falling at bay. They give you that little bit of confidence to get out without the worry you need, as long as they're on. But one day, those training wheels have to be taken off. All of a sudden, the road becomes different. The bike changes and is no longer steady. You are now afraid of crashing. That moment, your entire self is roaring to place the training wheels back on and go back to the safe place you know. If you want to get on a bike and really ride, get out and experience the joy and freedom of gliding downhill with the wind on your face. You have to look that fear in the eye, accept the wobble, and ride over your limits. In many ways, this is what life feels like for most of us. We put training wheels onto our life, patterns, habits, and comfort zones we are safe and stable within. They're the invisible rules we live by. Be quiet, you might offend somebody. Stay in this job, it's secure even if you hate it. You won't get that dream. These are invisible limits, like those training wheels, holding us up but preventing us from really learning to ride. As soon as those boundaries dissolve, we immediately hold them up tight, doing our best to hopefully maintain the illusion of control and safety. If instead, you decided to take off your training wheels and allow yourself to wobble, to lose your balance, to possibly even fall, would that make you a better rider? Why not move past fearful, and choose to go into spaces that feel uncomfortable. The truth is that most people don't know that they're in a cage. They are like a bird whose cage is his whole world. They might be invisible, but yes, these bars are there, made of fear, of self-doubt. For example, how do we respond to criticism? What if someone calls it out at work and points out that you made a mistake? At that moment, your defenses rise instantly. You justify, explain, or you deflect. Why? Because you're at the edge of your cage when that criticism comes. It makes you feel vulnerable. Like if they see you, you're not going to be up to par because they're going to see you. What if you didn't retreat into defense, but instead you just accepted the discomfort? What if you let it flow over you without trying to protect your ego? In that moment, you'd be leaving the cage, walking past the bars that locked you up, the bars that were keeping you in for so long. Cages aren't always obvious. Sometimes they're dressed up in achievements, success, and a well-planned out life. You see this everywhere with people who have it all: a wonderful job, a beautiful house, a great family. It appears on the outside to be freedom, but inside they are trapped by the fear of them all being gone. And they live their lives, terrified. If one thing goes wrong, their world will fall apart, obsessively worrying about the impression they make, their relationships and possessions, gold and jewels. It might be beautiful, but it's just decorating the cage. Now consider a different kind of cage: other people's expectations. From a young age, we are taught to fit into certain molds: be polite, get good grades, find a stable job, get settled, follow the rules. We just live within the cage and think we're free. Fear, the story we tell ourselves, and self-doubt create the bars. Once you start seeing through them, you realize that all these things were never real at all. Just behind those bars there's life, all its beauty and all its chaos. When you step through the moment, the world opens in ways you could never have imagined. The ride will be wobbly, you will fall, but the freedom you find will be so worth it. Get off the training wheels, shed the cage. It's time to ride. What if you were walking through a busy street? You're on a sunny day, walking around, moving people around you, some on phones, some in a rush to catch the next train, some just walking with a coffee in hand. You're not part of the crowd, yet you are. You're within yourself, looking out, looking at the world through a window, enough to still work, but never truly leaving yourself to step into the chaos. But now, imagine that this window wasn't physically available, but something within you, something you've unknowingly created within your own mind, some barrier in your mind that you've built over the years. You've created this inner window to explain this unpredictable world around you. That's not just seeing. It's making sense of so much you let in and so much you shut out. You think to yourself, I can adjust to life on my terms if I stay behind this. If I bounce away to my mind when things are overwhelming, I will not feel so exposed as to my physical self. In reality, deep down, it really doesn't work, does it? The truth of the matter is, even if you try to stay behind that mental window, the world outside always pushes. Like the city's hustle never stopping, life's chaos never does. Things still feel fragile inside that world of yours you so carefully constructed. You're constantly juggling with what you're thinking and what you're feeling. One day you're high and excited, and then a funny comment from a friend or a glimpse of you from years ago knocks you out of your balance. It's exhausting, right? Pumping so much energy into keeping things in order, you never actually feel the outside. Start to ponder how much of your time and energy you dedicate to clinging onto emotions, thoughts, and beliefs. It's like holding sand. The harder you hold, the more it slips through your fingers. When we don't have something to grasp onto, it feels as though we are lost, and so it is instinctive to cling. Ironically, clinging to things that pass automatically increases the perception of not knowing. This clinging happens whether we're clinging to an idea of who we should be or how people should behave, and becomes the cage trapping you in a loop of self-placed limitation. The trick lies in recognizing that what we are reaching out for does not exist. We assume these thoughts and emotions are who we are. From our successful to our unworthy, our broken to our strong, all of these labels we put on ourselves are like name tags at a conference. None of that is actually who we are. They are just quick, brief passing seconds in the micro-niche of one's existence, where fleeting identities we wear to feel. These mental constructs are like the heavy wool jacket you wear in cold weather when you just want to feel safe and protected. But eventually, cold weather will penetrate any jacket and bring those elements of life that are unpleasant. You've ever had these moments where you somehow forget about all those nice mental walls you built? Consider those rare occasions when you're so mired in something that you don't notice the passing of time at all. Your mind just lets go. You could be laughing so hard at a friend, reading a great book, or just gazing in awe at one of those awesome sunsets. Those moments where you become null between you and the world. You're not living it behind a screen. You're living it. When the moment is gone, the back in the mind, true to its cycle, like a security guard turning on the alarms, reminding you to get back to your much-used mental shelter. It says, don't get too carried away. Remember who you are. Remember the things you need to protect. You return so back to the clinging, to the inner chaos of holding it all together. Life is unpredictable. Things change. They will let you down, and nothing stays the same for long. You can try to master it all, but you can't, and then you become free. This isn't about building a perfect mental structure to protect yourself. It's about letting the wind blow through your life with nothing to lose. Reality is that you can only ever lose an illusion that you're pretending is real. So much of our life is spent curating this version of ourselves, like artists preparing portraits but portraying us in paint. They are painted onto the faces we have for everyone to see. I remember seeing my father come home to work when I was younger. He'd walk through the door, hear him smile for us, and he'd seem to be relaxed. But it would be a different smile he wore at the office when I occasionally would drop by for a visit. This delicate art, he had perfected it, of putting on and taking off different versions of himself. But occasionally, when he thought no one was looking, his eyes had this distant, almost vacant look. It was something deeper I thought I knew as a kid because he was tired. But now I know better. He wasn't just physically tired. He did not know where he ended and which roles he played. He could not hold up his own facades and was drained. We do this to each other too. Have you ever wondered why it's so much easier to get along with people when they do what you want them to do? We bristle, pull back, lash out when the slightest skip occurs, because their instability brings us out, thus outside our neat little world of which we are perfectly content. It's not just about them. To our delicate sense of control, it unsettles them for breaking the rules. It is universal need to keep it together. These intricate mental structures, like fortresses, that we build, we hope will keep us safe. But safe from what? We're really protecting ourselves from fear. Fear for not knowing, fear for not being perfect, fear of being deemed flawed or broken. But in doing so, we lose sight of something essential. Life is not something to overcome. Life is something to enjoy. Giving up, there's some sort of dark void about it that's deeply liberating. Then, when you stop clinging, even just for a moment, you start to see that the crazy, chaotic world we fear so much out there, it's not. It's inside of us. It's a panic of, we're not enough. It's the pressure of keeping up with the roles we've built. The fear that if we let go, it will all fall apart. What if letting go is the only way to really, truly find peace? Building a house is like life. We don't pay that much attention to what is our foundation. As soon as we can talk, we start laying bricks. Be this, we're told. Do that, they say. So we follow along and not thinking too much about it. Within hours, you have walls and a roof and a shiny front door, your own structure of self, designed to keep going in a world that expects so much of us. You put your likes and dislikes, your dreams and fears on the outside of it. It stands up well to the weather of daily life, and you're proud of that. What happens, however, when a storm comes along and begins cracking those walls? What if the foundation you've spent so much time building isn't as strong as you thought? What we often mistake as peace is when we have everything under control, when we build a solid, predictable, safe life. Real peace, however, comes from stepping into the unknown, stopping worrying about how we will manage to make things normal, or how we will rise above this chaos, with how we can't be protected from it. You try to hold yourself afloat, like you're floating on the ocean, and you just sink deeper. However, when you stop fighting, you realize the water holds you. It always has.